We're in Pass Christian, Mississippi. We are, as the crow flies, maybe 6 miles from the town of Waveland, Mississippi. Waveland is the official ground zero, according to the Army Corps of Engineers, where Hurricane Katrina came ashore. And of course, Katrina was hundreds of miles wide, so being in Pass Christian, 6 miles or so away from the center is nothing. This is the area that was the most ravaged by Katrina. People around here will tell you that what happened to New Orleans was a man-made disaster. After Katrina hit, that first, whatever it was, 12, 20 hours, everybody said, oh, the city had been spared, and then the levees broke. And so it was a man-made disaster in the sense that the levee board in New Orleans was where everybody put their, mentally deficient nephew or something. It was just a place for political hacks. It wasn't really taken as the high priority it should have been, and the levees just were not up to snuff. That was the failure of the human beings. Here, they had the ravages of the storm itself, and nothing could stand in Katrina's path. There's a story to be told down here, and it's not the conventional poverty story that we usually do, although Mississippi was the poorest state in the Union before Katrina hit. So yeah, there was plenty of poverty here and there's plenty of poverty after the storm. But these people are struggling to rebuild. They're struggling to get housing again. So it's a housing story. And one person down here, a guy by the name of Keith Burton, who's the editor of the Gulf Coast News, which is kind of like a journal of recovery online, he said what happened here was like a premonition of what will happen to the rest of the country if there's some disaster there. It's like we're really ahead down here in Mississippi of the rest of the country. So if this economic tsunami rolls through and we have a depression, or if there's an earthquake in San Francisco, this is like the little laboratory for how recovery is done, and quite frankly, it hadn't been done very well down here. Hurricane Katrina didn't just hit the PhDs. It didn't just hit the functional people who could do all this stuff. It hit a lot of people who weren't so functional. And that's an important point to understand, because a society can't just be geared for the most functional people. A society has to be geared for the people who are struggling if we're going to have a society where everybody can live. Why should maybe 10% of the population of the United States that's alive today have been homeless at one point or another? That's something in the nature of the economy, the cost of housing, the difficulty of recovering it, the declining value of the minimum wage, the disinvestment in public housing. All of these things have contributed to this crisis. And what happened was, our economy has been run more and more, and I don't think I'm saying anything that a listener, to watcher of free speech television doesn't know. Our economy has been run for the wealthy. So why did we have NAFTA and GATT and the WTO? Did the poor people march on Washington and demand that all their jobs be shipped over to China? Why didn't the minimum wage rise? Did the low-income workers march on Washington and say, don't raise our pay? No, this was all done by the people who have the influence in Washington, and these are the CEOs and the people like that whose bonuses alone, never mind their base salary, will feed, the population of a small country. This is what has happened, is that it's all become about money and not about justice. This country was founded, I know this country has its skeptics, but if you take a civics class, there were certain principles about the rights of man and what it means to be in a democracy and all of these things. Well, all of that just kind of went out the window. And the greedy and the rapacious and the people who had no sensitivity to the general population of this country have been running everything. And, well, lo and behold, what happened? They started speculating, they started breaking up the mortgages into derivatives, they started buying and selling everything with no relationship anymore to the human values. And that's why I say, if you'd been asking the homeless advocates, they would have been pointing at the people. They would have been saying, look at the policies you're enacting. People are in the streets. Let's do something about that. And the number one message is a society in which the poor are well cared for is a society that's better for us all. And that is what has been totally lost in the politics of the last couple of decades. So that's the link between the foreclosure crisis and the more quote-unquote conventional forms of homelessness, which you must remember are not conventional at all. We didn't have this crisis in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. This started because of policies, and the policies need to be changed.